We're here with Sheriff Alan Nienhuis. I did pronounce that right, didn't I?
Nienhuis.
Nienhuis. Okay. Well, it's my southern accent.
Yeah, there you go.
We appreciate you giving us some of your time today, and I would like to start off by, I understand that some of the frontline supervisors have voted to seek the possibility of unionizing, and just wanted to get your comments on that.
Sure. Well, what they've done is they've signed cards expressing an interest in having a vote, and if that vote goes through with a majority, they'll be able to collectively bargain, which basically means they're going to have a third party bargain the terms and conditions of their employment. And, you know, I already have my deputies in that situation, and they've been in that situation for several years.
So the deputies are unionized now?
They do have a collective bargaining agreement, and they're in a collective bargaining unit. There's a little bit of a difference between unions per se and a collective bargaining. Collective bargaining means they voted and they want to collectively bargain. They want to have a third party come in and bargain for the whole group. And that's what the vote would be. You know, you can join a union without having collective bargaining. Like, for example, the FOP or the PBA or someone else, you could join that without necessarily having them represent you collectively. But if they vote that in, then I'll be negotiating the terms and conditions of their employment with the third party, basically a negotiator, either one of them, one of the supervisors, or somebody else that they have come in and negotiate. And you know, that's definitely their right, and I have no problem with it. I would prefer to deal with the sergeants either one-on-one or as a group in a more informal setting, but if it's their choice. If they want to make it more formalized and have a contract, you know, that extends a year or more, then, you know, that's definitely their prerogative.
Okay. You know, I know it's election time, and which is one of the reasons why we're sitting here.
Sure.
We've been getting, there have been some Pasco deputies that we've ended up talking to that have brought up to us a $2 million lawsuit that was just settled down in Pasco that had to do with people that were fired, and they keep telling us that you were the person that fired these folks.
Well, I was the one that delivered the message, but no one in a sheriff's office has the authority to fire anyone except the sheriff. And, you know, a relationship, I think it's important to get on the record that all those individuals were command staff members. And the relationship that a sheriff has with his command staff, basically the very upper echelon of the agency, attorneys and captains and directors and so forth, that relationship is very unique. It's different than any other relationship the sheriff has with anyone else in the sheriff's office. And typically the sheriff gets to decide who those people are. And if the sheriff, for whatever reason, loses confidence in those people or believes that the relationship has gotten to a point where they can no longer be his command staff, and he comes in and tells the second command, the under sheriff or the chief deputy, that I want you to go and let these people know that their services will no longer be necessary, and you can let them know we're moving in a different direction. You know, that second command has only two choices in that matter. That second command can fulfill those orders, carry out those orders, or that second command can be one of those people that their services are no longer going to be needed. And, you know, that's exactly what happened there. I went in and talked with Sheriff White after the election. He called me in, and he gave me those orders, and I've known him long enough to know that there was no need to discuss it. There was no opportunity to discuss it. There was no questions I needed to ask. I just needed to carry out those orders, and I did. And that's the sum total of what happened.
So you were carrying out the orders that Bob White had given to you.
Absolutely, and Sheriff White has said that publicly. I've said it publicly, and we both said the exact same thing in our sworn depositions. It is the truth, and that's what happened.
Have you ever argued with Sheriff White on other issues?
Over the course of 10 years being his undersheriff, he and I have had some heated discussions. Now, when I left his office, whatever decision was made was my decision, and I was going to carry it out. And that's exactly what his second command does. He does not go around saying that he thinks a decision was wrong or whatever. In this case, however, there was no discussion because I've known Sheriff White long enough to know that this was not up for debate.
I understand. Okay. You know, if elected, we've been told that Wendy and Brian McGinnis plan to sue the sheriff's department for what they've stated are libelous statements. Do you think that any suit that they would file would have any merit, and would you care to expand on that situation?
Well, I've said all along that I was very surprised, disappointed that Mr. and Mrs. McGinnis decided to leave the organization. There was an issue that came up, and that happens every day. We have issues that come up in the organization, and we have to look into those issues, and that's exactly what we did. And we explained to them in no uncertain terms that these issues on the surface did not seem that serious, and we had to look into them. Of course, we didn't know what we were going to find, but on the surface, they did not seem that serious. And we told them that, just stand by, let us look into this, and we'll get to the bottom of it. And as it turns out, Ms. McGinnis got a counseling memo, and Mr. McGinnis got a reprimand for some of the things that occurred. Neither of those would have been career enders and would have been a very minor blip in their career, but they chose for whatever reason to leave the organization, and I'm still sorry that they did that, and I don't hold any animosity towards them, and the decisions they made were their decisions, and and I guess I'd have to see if they do have a lawsuit. I'd have to see the context of it to be able to address it, and of course we'd have our attorneys look at that.
Up to this point, it seems that you've been working very well with the county commissioners, especially on budget items and bringing things in line. Do you think that the cuts have in budgets to the sheriff's office have gone far enough, or do you feel like there are still some areas that there are savings to be had?
Well, I think I can kind of answer yes to both questions. First of all, I think on the surface, I think we've gone far enough, and any additional cuts may cause issues in the sheriff's office with our ability to serve. But that doesn't mean that we're constantly looking at ways to save a little bit of money based on changes that happen in the agency through attrition or promotions or things like that. And a good example is my recent PIO choice. I had a choice of people inside the organization, people outside the organization. Some of the applicants were sworn deputies and some of them were civilians. The best candidate for the job after some pretty thorough testing turned out to be an internal person who was a civilian. And those two things combined together, we were able to save some money because we were able to take her old position that she moved out of and downgrade it and save some money there. And obviously filling that position with a civilian position might have saved us a couple dollars too, because of it's a little less retirement and so forth. But those two things combined saved us about $20,000. So we're always looking for savings, but as far as drastic cuts to the agency, I really don't think that there's any that we're going to be able to do that wouldn't have a significant impact on our ability to serve the public.
Well, that brings up the question, do you have any fear that the cuts, the number of deputies on the street, that the deputies that are out there are less safe because of these cuts?
Well, safety is a very difficult thing to measure, and we're in a very, very dangerous business. And unfortunately, last year we had a higher number of law enforcement deaths through violence in the state of Florida than we have ever, and definitely in recent memory. And many of those deaths, unfortunately, occurred when they did have backup. So just because you have backup doesn't necessarily mean that you're automatically going to be safe. And I think everybody would agree it makes you safer, but we're still in a very dangerous business. But I can tell you that our response times to emergency calls are about a little over 6 minutes now last year, as compared to 2003, I believe it was, when they were in the 12-minute range. Well, it stands to reason that the first unit is getting there in 6 minutes, almost twice as fast for emergency, life-threatening calls. Then it stands to reason that there's more deputies on the street, which means that the deputies that are there have backup a little sooner than they would under the old circumstance of a 12-minute, because if it took 12 minutes for the first deputy to get there in 2003, the second deputy was probably a ways away also. Now, is it ideal? Obviously, you can always use more deputies. It does make it a little bit safer, and it does allow us to serve the public more. But we have to balance that with the cost. You know, we don't have unlimited funds. No agency does. So I think right now we're at a pretty good balance, but I do worry about my deputies every day. And unfortunately, we lost one last year, and it was a very difficult thing for his family, for the agency, and for me as sheriff, because, you know, I feel responsible for my people.
I understand. You're utilizing it, I guess, to help fill the void. You've made a big push for volunteers. Can you talk about some of the ways these volunteers are helping?
Sure. We have volunteers that can help in every aspect of the agency. We have civilian volunteers that do nothing more than help us answer the phones, and they're a great help. They even help my assistant at times answer the phones. We also have volunteers at the far other extreme that are fully certified law enforcement officers. They can go out and work independently. They could work tomorrow full-time as a deputy, but they choose to give back to the community by working for free. And we have everything in between. We have civilians that help us answer calls for service, public service aides, and what they do is they can go out, and I think that's what helps our response times, is they can go out, those public service aides, those volunteers, they can go out and they can answer those calls for service that don't require a badge and a gun. Maybe checking a house for a vacation check when somebody's on vacation, or going and picking up a found bicycle. What that does is that frees up a deputy that would normally have to do that. So that deputy is what we call 10-8 or in service, and able to respond to those emergency calls instead of picking up that bicycle or checking that house. So those volunteers are great. They really help us, and we're even doing something in between. We're doing an auxiliary program right now, and we actually have 7 men in the academy, in the police academy. It's a shortened version of what most police officers go through, and what that allows them to do is it allows them to wear a uniform, it allows them to carry a gun, they go through the same firearms training as a regular deputy, they go through the same driving as a regular deputy, but the rest of the academy is a little shorter. And what that allows them to do is it allows them to ride with the deputy in uniform and carry a gun. They just can't work alone. And that, again, you talk about safety, that obviously makes that deputy a little safer because he always has backup there. And it costs the taxpayers very little, and it also allows those people that are doing it to give back to the community. So I'm excited about that. We have some businessmen that are in the process of that, and they should be graduating within the next, I believe it's about a month or so. So they should be hitting the streets pretty soon. But it's been a long process. I think their academy started in March, and they go just about every night to the police academy, and most Saturdays, I think 3 out of 4 Saturdays, they spend their whole Saturday there. So they're very committed to that.
Wow.
So I'm excited about that too.
Well, Sheriff, I appreciate you talking to me today, and good luck in the election.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.